Welcome to my talk, Editor Scripting from the Real World. My name is Oliver. I'm an indie developer from Germany. I've been using Unity for a couple of years and Unity Editor Scripting for all of those years. And what I wanted to do with this talk is basically just, I don't want to tell you about Editor Scripting because I assume that most of you already know about it. But what I learned is that everybody knows something about it, and there are always these little nuggets that you can still learn. And basically, I just wanted to show you a bunch of my game projects that I've been working on for the last couple of years, and what kinds of editor scripts are in there, and what I did with them. I am focusing today on editor scripts that help you design tools for your level designers, or that help you basically improve your workflow and change Unity so it works for your game. There are tons of other ways to use editor scripting, for example, to improve your import pipeline, your export pipeline. When you build a game, you can have post-build scripts and all of that. So there's tons of stuff more to learn, but I'm focusing on stuff that you can do in the editor to help you create tools for your game or for your project that help you along. So yeah, basically I'm just going to fire off everything that I have, and then hopefully you get something out of that. Let's start very, very simple. Menu item. Basically, on the top you have your menu, and you can design your own menu items in there and add your own functionality to Unity's menu. And I'm going to switch back and forth between multiple different projects and my presentation here. So just that you know that I'm switching a lot. So the example I wanted to give for menu item is a very simple one. In every project that I create, I create this little script that has an open scene menu item at the top, which basically just lists all the scenes that I have, so I have a quick access to them, and I don't have to find them in the project view. I'm sure everybody knows how ridiculous and annoying that is. This is actually very simple. I have I don't have it open. All right. So I created okay. I have to start a little bit earlier just so that I know where you guys are at. Does anybody not know what editor scripting is at all? All right. Does anybody not know about the special folder in the project view that is the editor folder and what it does? All right, so let me start there. So when you create an editor script, most often you have to create the editor folder in your project. This folder is a special folder devised by Unity where you can create different kinds of scripts. So basically in every other folder you have all your runtime scripts, and in this editor folder you have your editor scripts, which allows you to include at the top or use the Unity editor runtime. Can you see that, by the way? Yes? Or should I zoom in? Or I see nodding, so I just continue. So any script that is an editor script is using the Unity editor classes or runtime at the top. And you can only do that with scripts that are in the editor folder. So that's what the special editor folder is. Menu item is one of those things. Once you're in the editor folder and you have your using Unity editor at the top, you can have this attribute menu item here, and you can put it in front of any static function. And it's very simple. It just expects a string, which is basically, as you remember before, we had this open scene at the top, and then the whatever name the menu item should be. So we have the open scene, and then the resolution changer. And you can put more slashes in there, and then it creates these nice hierarchical menus. So you can even layer them just by adding tons of slashes in here. So just the maps folder, and then, yeah, basically a folder structure. I created this this little helper function because basically every function, every menu item here does the same. It just opens a scene. So open scene does this. It's very simple. It's just editor application just it checks if there are any changes in the current scene you're in, and then asks the default Unity prompt, do you want to save the scene? And then if everything is taken care of, then I just open the scene. That is how you open scenes and how you create menu items. This is basically the style of my talk, so I'm just firing this off. And in the end, hopefully we have some time, then you can ask questions. But I think there's so much to learn about editor scripting. I just want to give you a bunch of buzzwords that you can Google afterwards. All right. So that's menu item. Very, very helpful. You'll see later on that I use this to access all my other editor scripts and stuff like that. So yeah. The next one is the very basic custom inspector. We all know that when you create a component in Unity and you add it to a game object, that you have the nice inspector. You can inspect the variables. And if you have some public variables, you can even change those variables. But it's very rigid. It's always the same. If you have a float, you have a float field there. If you have an array, you have kind of a sort of nice array list there, but not really. And most of the time, you need to do stuff over and over again, and you want to create a very specific custom script for that. And a specific custom editor for that does exactly what you want it to do. And I have, in my second, that's why I have 3 projects, so please excuse if I have to change back and forth again. I don't have my open scene up here. What's going on? I'm confused. I have this in all my projects. All right. So this game is basically this game is called Farm for Your Life, and you can imagine basically you have a scene like in Diablo from top down, and you have tons of items that you can pick up. So all these items that you can pick up need data that the game can project. So for example, I have the apple fruit. I select the apple fruit here, and you see that I have a component called handheld object. And there are a couple of default variables, and they are just like there's a public 2 public vectors here. There's a public enum here. So this is all the default stuff that you get by just defining a property public, and then Unity gives you this. But there are also some buttons here, which I created using a custom inspector, and yeah. So what a custom inspector does is you tell it that object editor, naming things properly, always helpful. All right, so I talk about the handheld object components, and I have. Basically, I cheated a little bit in this one because I really just wanted to have the default inspector with some added stuff. So I called the draw default inspector method here, but this is a very simple custom editor, so I wanted to show this off. So a custom editor is done by creating a class, again, in the editor folder. This class, instead of extending from mono behavior, it extends from editor. And then on top of that, you put the attribute that this is a custom editor and what type this editor is for. So whenever Unity draws the handheld object editor in the inspector, it finds my custom editor here and draws and uses my code instead of the default Unity one to draw the inspector. And then I tell it again to use the default Unity inspector. But I add the buttons on after the default inspector. So when you're using Unity runtime, you know GUI or GUI layout, and this is basically what you use in custom inspectors as well. So I'm adding just a bunch of buttons here. If GUI layout button, so when this button is pressed, then I want to do stuff. And this is for my game. This is very helpful because the character picks up multiple different stuff items. So, for example, it can be a tool like an axe. It can be an apple, like in this case, and all of these objects need to be attached to the character's hand somehow. But all of the objects need to be attached differently and with different carry animations. So so the handheld objects basically stores the offset values. It is attached to the hand bone, and then I have the offset values here. But the problem is that if you see here the values are very intricate and have a lot of digits after the comma, and I don't want to put them in manually. So what this button does for me, the use current transform, is I can just press the play button, pick up an object, and align it in the game view, or press pause and align it in the scene view like I want to, so it's in the hand like I want it, and then I just click use current transform and it copies that over. So that's a very simple example for a custom editor. And we continue with property attributes. Property attributes help you define the default editor that Unity gives you. So, for example, if we go back to let's change the script a little bit. So, let's say we have a float value in this handheld object, but I want to, and as you all know, that by defining it public, I get a field in here. That once it compiles, where I can put in the value. But let's say this is a value where I know this value can only be between 0 and 100, and I want to make sure that even in the editor where I can basically here I couldn't put in 200, but I know that my script expects values from 0 to 100. I can use the property attribute range, for example, to just tell Unity that this float only allows values from 0 to 100. And then Unity checks in the editor if the value that I put in is valid and disallows anything that is invalid, which is helpful so you can force your level designers to not put in values that you don't want. And it even gives me a nice slider here. So yeah, that's what the range does. And there are a couple of different attributes like that. And again, this is basically called a property attribute. And there's a ton in the documentation for Unity. There's a list of all the stuff that is available. But this way you can basically shape the default Unity inspector in a way you can shape it a little bit without having to write a custom inspector for very simple scripts. A similar thing is the property draw. A property draw basically means that if you have a variable type that is not known, or even if you have a variable type that is known, but if you want to have an editor field that behaves in a specific way, or that is drawn in a specific way every time this field is used, I know this is confusing, I showed which is probably better, then a property draw is your friend in this case. So for in my game, I have a huge list of item types. And I can show you basically, the item types is basically is just an enum. And I wanted to have it as an enum because I use the item types in my game, in my scripts all the time. So, for example, there's a story event and I need to create an apple at that position. And I have this function create object, and then it expects the item type enum, which allows me, when I write the code, to have code completion, so I can actually have the correct name in there. If I had to put in like a string called apple, then maybe sometimes I just misspell this and stuff like that. But by having an enum like this, I can basically in every script, if I put item type and then apple, and I have my code completion there. But so that's helpful. But what's not helpful is that you have tons of items. And if you just put an enum public, then you might know that you get a drop-down menu. And if you have tons of items in there, then the menu is very long and you have to scroll every time, and that's very annoying and not very helpful. So what the property drawer did for me is it allowed me to categorize all these items. So I still have a drop-down menu like here. So this is the item script. Basically, what I did here is it's just a public variable of my enum item type, but it's not a default drop-down menu. It uses my property drawer that I scripted. And what it does is, when I click down it, I have a neatly organized list of all my items that are categorized into different categories. So I don't have this huge list, but it's very easy to access them. And this is basically this is what a property drawer does. If you have a custom type, you can then script a custom script for that type. And whenever you use that your type in whatever script, your custom editor is used instead of the default one. This is done very simply by, again, an editor script doing in the editor folder. You extend your class from property drawer, and then you tell Unity, just like the custom inspector, you tell Unity, this is a custom property drawer, in my case, for the type item type. So whenever an inspector for item type is used, use mine instead of the default Unity one. And then you have onGUI here, and you can do basically whatever. What I do is I load the item database and then just sort through them. And in my item database, I show that database later. I tag each item in which category they are. So the script can sort them. This is what a property drawer does. Next, decorated drawers. So many drawers. This is a quite new addition. I think this was added in 4.5, and I love the editor team for that, because this decorated drawers allows you to style your custom editor. So for example, if you have a script with, let's say, 5 float variables that are in a group, and then you have another 5 more float variables, but they do something logically, they belong to a different group. But if you do make all these 10 variables public, they just get displaced in a long list, and it doesn't look very nice. By using decorated drawers, you can tell Unity to say, hey, put a headline in here. Let's just do that, and you can basically just do some very simple layouting stuff without having to write a complete writing and talking at the same time, without having to write a complete custom editor for it. And there are 2 default decorated drawers. One is space and one is header. Header I'm using right here, and then it's still compiling. And where did I put it? Oh no. Maybe because I'm using a custom, no, that was stupid. I'm using a custom inspector here, so something is messed up there. So, but you get the decorated drawer header and space, so you can have a nice label in there, a headline, or you can space stuff out a little bit without having to write a custom inspector for that. And you can also create your own decorated drawers. They behave very similar to property drawers, except that you can use multiple on one variable type. And they don't have to be assigned to a specific variable type. You can throw them on any variable that you want. So for example, if you have a nice tooltip box, you can make a decorator drawer from that, so you can write a bunch of tooltips all over the place without having to write a custom inspector for that. So those are decorated drawers. And I think those were all the drawers. Yes? let's go and continue with custom windows. Custom windows are very similar to the custom inspectors, except that a window pops up and then you can do a bunch of stuff in there. So an example for a custom window is, is the item database. I created, as you saw before, I have tons of items in my game, so I need them, and all of those items have tons of attributes attached to them. So you can, let's see here, let's go down there, let's see, we have a glass of, oh, that's not very interesting. Huh, well, we'll see, we'll make it interesting. So you see, I have all my items here, and at the top I can give it a unique name, and this name is then used in the enum. The enum is basically created by a script, and this name is used in the enum here. It has a unique ID, and here's the path. This path is used to create the property drawer I showed you before. So the wooden table is basically put in the buildables category and then in the furniture category. And yeah, I can. This is the GUI texture that is associated with this item. This is the prefab that is associated with this item, a language ID string, and stuff like that. I can tell this is the furniture, and I can build this. So I can tell it this costs maybe, let's say this costs 2 wood. So later in the game, when I want to craft this wooden table, the game knows this costs 2 wood. Anyway, this is an editor window, and it's basically you can create helper windows for you to create level design scripts and stuff like that. This is of course a very, very complicated one, but I want to show you the basic principle without behind the window. It's again an editor script, of course, so it's using Unity Editor. Then it inherits from the class editor window, and you can, and then in the onGUI function, you basically do all the GUI stuff that you want to draw. So with the GUI either GUI layout or GUI class that you know. And one quirk or one thing about editor windows, you need a way to open them. And most of the time, I use a menu open for that, a menu item for that. And this menu item, this function really just does the one call to editor window get window, which then either finds a window that already exists and puts it into focus, or if there's no such window anywhere to be found, then it creates a new window of this type, and you can give it a nice headline, a name. In this case, it was item data, or I had the dish database, dish progress. Oh no, this seems to have a error somewhere. Anyway, you get the point. This is an editor window. This is how you open it. You can also open editor windows wherever you want in an editor script. So, for example, you could have a custom inspector which draws a button where you call the get window function. So from any editor script, you can basically open windows by using this line. Next one, scriptable objects. Scriptable objects are very interesting because I don't see them used much. I don't know if people just don't know about them or something, but scriptable objects are basically the same as a Moni behavior, as a component, but you don't need an object in your scene for it. You can create an asset from it. So let's say you create a script and it has just one public variable, like a float, and you want to save it, but you don't want to save it in a scene. You don't want to create an object, attach the script, and then save that value. You want to have it in your project view. A scriptable object allows you to do that. You can create an asset that lives in your project view, and that has all your data in it. And I use it, for example, for all my databases. So the item database, the item database. You saw the item database window before, and the item database. And this is basically the scriptable object here. Very simple one. I just have a list of item data, and item data is defined here, which is just a simple class. It's important that I define this class as serializable so that Unity knows this. I can save this class, and then I have all the data in here, so that you saw aligned pretty in the editor window. So each item data has an ID, it has a name, a language ID, and so forth. All the data. But the important bit is that it is stored in a scriptable object, basically just in a huge list of item data. And you have to. What's a little quirk about scriptable object is when you don't have any scriptable objects yet, it's hard to create one, which either I haven't found the right way to do it, but I always have to create my own editor scripts to create my scriptable objects for me with this line of code, the scriptable object.create instance. And then once I have one, I can just duplicate it and assign a new. If I have a different, I just show it here. I have tons of different databases. Item database. There you go. You see it here. This is in my project view. I have all my scriptable objects. This is in the item database without the window. This is the pure raw data basically. But you see at the top here, if I duplicate this. Just like in any other script, Unity gives you the script access at the top. So if I create a new object, a new scriptable object, I can just drag that in there, and then Unity, for a second, thinks, well, this doesn't make sense, so I discard all the old data and then have a new object. So once you have one, it's easy to create new ones, but to create the first one, you have to go through hoops a little bit. Yeah, but scriptable objects are very useful to store data in your project, basically. Gizmos. I'm sure many of you heard about Gizmos, but just in case you haven't, let me show you what they are. Gizmos basically give you a way to create debug data in the scene view. For example, this is a game where you fly a ship. And I want to design. Just imagine if you imagine a Mario Kart level, Mario Kart 8, they can go all over the place, like make loopings and the turn around and stuff like that. So I want to have something similar like that. I want to be able to design the way my ship moves and turns and stuff like that. So I created a level curve thing with tons of different functionalities, so I can have, just like in Photoshop, have handles here, so I can, yeah, it's basically a Bezier curve for people who knows what that is. So I can very intricately design the curve where I want it to be, and I can use the Unity tools like rotate to rotate these main points, and then you see the orange lines are basically the normals, and all these are gizmos. And what I can also do, and I'm very proud of that, I can preview. Let's start at 0. I can preview where the ship flies. So this is just a quick way for me to see. When I rotate, let's say I rotate this around, and then I preview this, I can see with these gizmos, oh yeah, the ship turns this way. So I can quickly design the level and see if it hits any objects and stuff like that. But all these lines you see here are just gizmos, and I show you level curve. So gizmos are drawn in in the method onDrawGizmos, this is basically a defined method, just like update or start something. Unity looks for this method, and if it exists, then Unity calls it at the right time. And in this case, onDrawGizmos is called when the scene view is redrawn, and you can draw all your gizmos in here. Let's draw a level curve, and you draw gizmos using just the Gizmos object, and then you have the draw cube in there or draw line, and as you can see here, you can set the color for the objects. So it helps you to quickly draw a bunch of debug data into this scene view. And one small trick about Gizmos that I only found out recently, embarrassingly enough, is that you can also draw the gizmos in the game view. You just have to enable it up here in the right corner. And I never saw that button before. But also helpful when you play the game in the editor, of course, you can enable gizmos in the game view as well, and then see your debug data there. There's a second very similar function. I can show it to you in the level curve waypoint called, where is it? We have onDrawGizmos again, and then you have also onDrawGizmos selected. And this function is called when the specific object is selected. So in my case here, you see in onDrawGizmos, I draw what's important, the red sphere in the center. And if it's selected, I also draw a yellow wire sphere around it, so I know that it's selected. So not selected, and then selected. Very simple, but also very helpful. And then also, if you have empty game objects that don't have any meshes or anything visual attached to it, you can't really select them in the scene. But if you draw a gizmo, then when you click the gizmo, then the object will be selected as well. So for example, these waypoints here are just empty game objects, but because they are drawing gizmos, I can select them. So that's very helpful. Next one, editor callbacks. Okay, so this is getting very into very fun part for me, because you see this game has spherical planets, and so level design is a pain when you use the regular Unity tools, because they are of course all designed for linear levels. So when I move stuff around, it constantly flies off the planet, and I have to constantly update them and rotate them so they still are on the planet. So I thought, how can I make this easier for myself? And I use the callback editor application.update. What this does is I can basically add my own functions to that callback, and then this gets called 30 times a second in the editor. So I can have an update function in the editor. And once I had that, I could do this. I now have a level editor that I can control with my Xbox controller. And it's very easy to navigate the planet. I always stay on top of the planet. I can grab my objects and drag them around, and they stay on the planet. And yeah, I can rotate around. And yeah, tons of that. So basically, the twin stick helped me to navigate this planet, but the editor callback made that happen. And let me show you that bit of code and my controller editor here. So as I showed on the slide there, I hook into the editor application.update, and I add my own function to that. And the onUpdate function that you can is basically just a static void function. And now, in this case, it's called 30 times per second, I think, but basically just like update. And then I can use I'm not sure if this also works on a Mac, but on Windows there's a .NET library called Xinput Interface, I think. I'll check it out later. But there's a DLL that helps you use Xinput, because Unity's regular input is using direct input, and you cannot access all functions. For example, through Unity's default input method, you cannot use the rumble feature, for example. By using the Xinput framework, you can. And you can also use both triggers at the same time. You don't have if you push both, then you get 0 again, because this one is +1 and this one is -1. You can access both at the same time, which is also very helpful if you want to design a game like I do with primary weapon and secondary weapon. But luckily, you can also put this class into the editor folder, and then you can use the Xinput stuff in your editor as well. This is the gamepad function. Let me just quickly check what the actual name is for that. Unity Projects Sky Arena. There, it was interface. Xinput interface.dll. And you can Google that. You get some CS scripts with that as well, and then you can very easily get the Xinput values. And then you can also, if you're making a multiplayer game where you have 4 players using controllers at the same time, you want to use that and not the default Unity input stuff. All right, and the same goes with the on-scene GUI delegate. But I think, yeah, the exact next one. So you can also do stuff in the scene. You can draw stuff in the scene view. And what I mean by that is, in this very same editor that I have here, I can also, nope, wrong button. There you go. Let me check this here. So I can also add new objects, of course. So if I press a button, this menu opens, and I draw a bunch of buttons in the scene view. And I can select an environment. Let's go to desert, and then the spine cage. And now I can add a new spine cage object. But the interesting bit here is that you can draw GUI stuff into the scene view very easily. And this is done similar to hooking up to the editor application update. Like so. You can also hook into the scene view on scene GUI delegate. I'm not sure why they call it delegate here and not update delegate. Well, whatever, naming. But basically, just remember editor application.update for your update function that is called 30 times a second, and scene view.onScene GUI delegate for your on-scene GUI. So you can hook into the on-scene GUI and create your own GUI drawing into the scene view. And if you want to draw GUI stuff like I did before, you have to use the handles.begin GUI function, as you basically have to tell Unity, I want to draw GUI stuff now in this when you're in the scene view delegate. And so we are in on-scene GUI here, and I can. So why this is necessary is, for example, I start off by drawing a center cross. I'm not sure if anybody noticed. It's very, very subtle, but in the center you can see the plus, which basically just helps me, which is basically my mouse cursor, so I know which object gets selected and stuff. But this is just drawing a texture, so I don't need I don't need all the GUI stuff for this. Basically, I just load the texture. Oh, I do know. And then, okay. So I load the texture. Then I tell Unity, hey, I want to draw GUI stuff. And then I use GUI draw texture to draw that cross. And then I tell Unity, okay, I'm done with drawing GUI stuff now. So this is just something to keep in mind when you use the on-scene GUI delegate, that when you want to draw stuff, you have to tell Unity specifically to do that. And the last scripts that I want to show you is one that basically uses a couple of all the, basically everything that I told you, and uses the Unity scene view in a way that is not intended, but works quite well, actually. So let me set this up a little bit. I wanted to work on a game that is similar to SingStar, but so the game itself is not very important. What I needed is an editor where I could create the songs, where I could say these are the notes, these are the lyrics, and how high they are and stuff like that. But if you have and then also in my game I have multiple different melody lines. So each song has different melody lines that you could sing. So you can imagine that if you have an editor, there are tons of different notes in there. So hundreds and hundreds of note objects, basically, that have to get drawn in my editor so I can drag them around. And I want this to be very efficient. So I thought, well, what does Unity do very efficiently? Well, you can put a bunch of objects into the scene view, and Unity doesn't flinch, basically. So let me just show you what I did, and then I talk about it step by step. So make this back facing. This is my song editor, and scroll in here. The added cool part, because this is in the scene view, is that I can use all the scrolling and zooming functions. And all of this, if I string objects, basically. These are all cubes. And then I have a bunch of different 3D text in there for the lyrics, and a bunch of gizmos. And so I can create new nodes. I can very easily, okay, it gets screwed here a little bit. I can very easily change how long the notes are. So basically design my SingStar line here. And I can do that very visually. I can drag them around. I can snap them to each other, just like you would maybe expect from Premiere or another video editing software. I can change. I have some GUI stuff up here in the scene view, so where I can change the lyrics of the song, and where and basically all of that is in the scene view and very efficient because all of those are cubes. Yeah. So and this is basically just a combination of all of what I told you before. So we have the begin GUI stuff down here. So a bunch of different a bunch of different buttons that I can use to navigate this, and I can playback basically and preview all that stuff. I can listen to only the preview. I can mute the metronome. I can have preview notes in here as well. Basically, just I moved them around so the melody line is not as pretty anymore. But basically, a piano playing, showing me a preview of the line that I have, so I can match them up with the song that you had there. And I'm also using the update, the editor application .update in here to do all of the dragging stuff. And yeah, so those are basically a bunch of my editor scripts that I did over the years, and I think, I hope you found something useful, and we have time for questions if you have any. Yes, please.
You had a bunch of scripts open in Visual Studio there. Is that a particular type of project in Visual Studio for editing those scripts, or do you just drag the folder and start modifying?
No, the scripts. So you basically are the editor scripts in a specific project, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, have you created a DLL in Visual Studio and then you use that within Unity?
Oh, okay. So
It seemed to be in a solution there. I'm just wondering what.
yeah. The editor scripts are not created in a specific DLL and then added to the script, but Unity does all that for you by just once you create the editor folder and put stuff in there, then the regular solution that you have that Unity creates for you, it creates the runtime stuff, which is what you have with every game, and then you have the editor project. So Unity does all that for you, basically. There's nothing special.
It's also asking, I think, about Unity VS. I think is the part it's asking.
Oh, yeah, I have Unity. Well, that changed now that Unity VS is part of Microsoft, right? So Unity VS, this is what I have here. Unity VS, if you don't know it, you should check it out. It's basically an extension for Visual Studio that gives you a bunch of additional functionality to work with Unity. So you have debugging functionality, just like you would have in MonoDevelop. You can also have that in Visual Studio. And once you use Unity VS, it creates these Unity VS solution files. But this is basically the same that Unity does, but yeah, just they create their own to be able to do whatever they need to do. I'm sure they had a reason why they need to create their own solutions, but that's basically the Unity VS plugin. And it's free now because it's part of Microsoft. So yay.
Yeah, I see you're using like a specific scene for your song editor, level editor.
Yeah.
There. Is there like a way to like lock down that so that you're not actually changing the editor, or how are you actually saving those songs or levels out when you're done editing them?
All right. How do I save them? Well, I have the save button up here, and it all. Wait, there's more. And it all gets stored in the scriptable object. So, full circle. Yeah. And then, oh yeah, one thing that I forgot about, which I had here, initialize unload. The Xbox editor and also the song editor here, they got. I don't want to load them and basically I don't want to click a button and say now I want to start this, just like I had to do with an editor window, for example. I just want it to be started. So you have this initialize unload attribute, and you can add that to an editor, like so, initialize unload, and then when you do that, a static constructor of this class gets called immediately once Unity gets loaded. And this is helpful because then so you can see here the song editor scene editor has a static constructor, song editor scene editor, and in that static constructor I hook into all these events. So basically, as soon as I start the project, this constructor is called and the events are hooked up and the editor is ready to use, and I don't have to initialize it manually. So that's also helpful. Yes, please.
Do you use like direct UI calls or you wrap them? For example, your UI is pretty big, right?
Yeah.
And like you start like UI, that button or label, and you pass the style and content. So do you just use those API calls or you wrap them somehow?
You mean the GUI layout and GUI
No,
stuff?
I mean all the GUI API. So
yeah, I use all that because in the editor we know that the GUI stuff is not very efficient, but in the editor it's not.
No, I mean, do you use like direct calls or you wrap them? For example,
Oh, I use direct calls most of the time because as you find out when you start working on editor scripts, those are always internal, so you hack stuff left and right. So you should probably construct them better, so you could maybe reuse them at some point and write wrappers for that. But editor scripts basically just get hacked together and then just work in that specific.
So back to this item database view, you have a window, custom window,
Yeah.
like a tree view. So how do you build it?
Oh, sure. I can show you that. So what he's asking is the item database I showed you before. how do I do this tree view, for example? And this is not really. It looks like a tree view, but it's not. It's just my hacky way of imitating a tree view. This is the wrong. Item database. No. 1 second. I'm sorry. Item database editor. Oh, yeah. So let's see. So you see here, this is the item database. Huge script. Should have probably split it up in several scripts. Didn't, because it's an editor script. And let's see here. On GUI. This is an older project, so we have to find out together. So on GUI. At first, I load a bunch of stuff that I need later, and then I use the regular begin horizontal stuff. So I draw the item list, and I draw the selected item. So these are basically the two. This is the item list, and then this is the selected item stuff on the right. So the item list is a vertical list of, not the button, not those buttons. Well, yeah, so it's just a vertical list of GUI stuff, of GUI layout. Where is it? There, foldouts. There you go. So it's basically just a long list of GUI layout foldouts, and I store all I store all the data in the folder array if they're open or not, and if they're open, I draw the items from that folder, and if not, I can see if I can find that quickly. But as I said, this script is a little bit older, so let's see. I get the folders here, and I can't make sense of it now. Sorry.
Just built APIs where like it's the UI or stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a long list of GUI layout stuff. There is not a tree view component or stuff like that I used. It's just a list of foldouts and buttons.
With your song editor, did you find a way to play back the audio in the editor without using reflection, or did you use reflection?
Yeah, I play, then stop and play again, and that seems to work. Let me show you, because obviously the audio is working, so let's see how that is done. I think it's, see if I can find that button quickly. Save songs, scene editor maybe, on scene GUI. Draw GUI. This kind of looks like nice code. Draw playback buttons. Label, pause, is playing. Let's say what this playing does. Play all. Yeah, it's basically just play. So it just accesses the, I have audio sources in here. Those audio sources are a list of audio sources, which I fill. Where do I get those? How do I get those? I think it's probably just from the children have them. Let's see. Let's unmaximize this. So press play. So yeah, it's just I just create new objects, a new game object with an audio source component to it, and then this does nothing. Then just press play. So I don't know. I know that I had problems with that before as well, in a different project, and I just played, stop, and then play those three next to each other, and that seemed to work. But obviously, maybe at some point that was fixed. So it's just play in the editor. Yeah. Yeah, we can create one. So we are in the let's say this is okay. So this is obviously the wrong point to insert this, but we can create a menu item in the unite, create scriptable object. So we need a static void created, and then scriptable object create instance item database. That's a scriptable object. I create this first, and then oh yeah, there are a bunch of steps. Right? Sorry, I forgot. Because you have to add it to the asset database as well, and now you put me on the spot. So do I remember how to do that? Asset.
Asset database has to create asset.
Thank you.
There's a useful method in project window util that will create it and start renaming and all kinds of things like that.
There you go. So asset database dot create asset. You put in the new scriptable object you put in there, and then you put. I'm not sure if I put asset in. If I do. Thank you. And then new object. All good? See, coding is not knowing. Coding is knowing where to look, right? All right. All right, correct. I knew there were 3 lines, so thank you for saying that. So let's see. I have to kill this window. There are a bunch of errors here for some reason. Array index is out of range.
You set it to default layout.
Yeah. I'm sorry, now I'm just confused when you throw and stuff. What did you say?
If you set it to the default layout, it'll kill that one.
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you. Whatever, like this. Oh, that's ugly. Damn it. So we have our unite button, then create scriptable objects, and then if everything went to plan, we have our new object right here. There you go. So this is where did I put it there? So this is basically a perfect example of pair programming. Yes, please.
How often do you end up messing up all of your data when you're modifying your editor scripts? Do you have any workflow to try and prevent doing that after a project?
Well, no. I mess it up a lot, but it's all in version control. So, yeah, you should put yourself in version control.
So you on the Gizmos for your demo, you had a Bezier curve with
Yeah.
some handles. Can you actually grab and drag those handles, or do they just represent the values in the editor?
I had that functionality before, but then I had the problem that, let me go to that, that for the Bezier curve I use, oh, it's 5 o'clock, I have to finish. For the Bezier curve I use the normal of the handle object. So each waypoint is basically one object, you see, and I use the normal to calculate all the other normals. So so I removed that again, but I had the functionality before where I could do that, and the way I achieved that is by creating a separate empty game object for the handles as well. And they were basically, so I had more children, exactly. So I had a basically in each waypoint there was a next and a previous child, and those were basically the handles. Yeah.
One more quick question. Are those on draw selected, and why is it selecting the other, like you're showing handles on everything on the curve, or do those always show? You don't have,
Those always show, and on draw selected is when I select everything is just the yellow part. So, yeah. All right. It's 5. I have to stop now, but I'll be around. So if you have specific questions, come talk to me.